1989 is more than just the title of the wildly successful Taylor Swift album. It's also the year that I decided to turn to my then boyfriend Andrew and say, as an actress in training, I should get as much life experience as I can. And I just realized I've never attended a real live trial. The local TV news in Los Angeles was obsessed with covering the trial of Richard Ramirez, dubbed the Night Stalker, who had terrorized LA and San Francisco throughout the early 80s with multiple home invasion, rapes, assaults, murders. He was captured in 1985, and his trial started in 1988. The boyfriend and I made it downtown to the criminal courts building and managed to snag seats in the third row. Soon after, I heard the distinctive sound of metal rattling. I look up, and there was Ramirez, wearing handcuffs and shackles around his ankles. I don't know what came over me, but I decided to indulge a crazy notion that I had that I would stare him down. Yeah, I don't know why either. I wanted to give him the "you're going down" glare that has terrified, probably nobody ever. There's nothing to gain from staring down a captured killer who's undoubtedly so bored by now that he'd actually find a curly-haired crazy lady scowling at him amusing. But I was intent on staring him down, and damn it, I did. Ramirez stared right back. He did not smile. He looked straggly. His frame was tall and thin. He did not present himself as someone who was trying to show his innocence. Of course, I'd seen him on the news, but up close, he actually really stared me down in a way that anyone would label as menacing. So my then boyfriend, Andrew, under his breath, goes, "Is he looking at you?" And I go, "Shh, I'm working." All right, having seen plenty of TV shows and movies, I was expecting to see tears, pointing, loud objections, and gavel banging. Instead, I'll be honest, it was over an hour of detailed testimony about Ramirez's sneakers. Granted, it was illuminating to see how a defense lawyer wears down a witness with potentially damning testimony, bogged down the person with details and inconsistencies. Well, was it navy or regular blue on those shoes? I mean, that kind of thing. Then they started down the same road of specificity about a blanket. A blanket? Recess was called. Now, I was surprised to see that the attorneys for both sides, as well as the jurors and spectators, were all sharing the same space in the hallway. The lawyers seemed chummy with each other, and the jurors were talking to each other. Nobody was sequestered. This is not what I was expecting. Okay, however, I took it all in as an exercise for my acting training. Remember, this was the real reason I was there. I went to the ladies' room right off the hallway, and after I emerged from the stall, I recognized a woman from the courtroom washing her hands next to me. So I casually said, "Now, that last witness, do you think the sneaker they were talking about?" And she just turned and walked away. Rude. I thought we were all chummy at the Night Stalker trial. Well, when I came out of the bathroom, I instantly felt hands on me. Sheriff's deputies yanked away my purse and searched its contents, while another pair of officers dragged me away as I heard my boyfriend, himself being held back, yell, "Where are you taking her?" I screamed back to him, "I don't know." Was I being kicked out? Worse, they ushered me into the judge's chambers. I was shaking so hard I could barely concentrate on anything. I thought I was going to jail. I had been in row 3 among everyday people, and now for some reason I'm facing Superior Court Judge Michael Tynan, and I don't even know why. The attorneys for both sides were also in the room. Was this a horrible mistake? The court stenographer was there as well. And when she started typing, that's what made me think, oh shit, this is official. One of the attorneys said to me, "Tell the judge about the incident in the restroom." I was so scared. I swear, I didn't even know what they were talking about. Incident? Restroom? So I said, "I went to the restroom?" I swear to God, I was afraid to talk. Was I going to prison based on what I would say at this moment? Then the woman I spoke to at the sink was brought in, and a brief sense of relief washed over me. So I go, "Hey, you're the lady from the restroom." Again, the attorneys go, "What'd you say to her?" And I said, "Oh, I was just asking about the sneaker because," like that. And then I just described the bathroom scene, which to my mind was going to end all this nonsense because the nice lady over there would clear it all up for me. No one said a word for a while. And then Judge Tynan said, "We're going to return you to your seat, but you're not allowed to leave." Back in the courtroom, I noticed that all the spectators were gone, and the jury had been excused as well. So it was me, my boyfriend, the woman from the bathroom, both teams of attorneys, and Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And by the way, I could tell Ramirez's attorneys were loving this. When the judge called back the jury and audience members, the term they actually use, by the way, for spectators, audience members, I thought my nightmare was over. Then Judge Tynan says to the entire courtroom, "Miss Griffin, approach the bench." Oh, shit. I get up. I walk through that little creaky, swinging gate, and then the judge goes, "Stop." So he stops me right next to Ramirez, who's staring up at me, close enough to touch me. He's just staring up at me during the following exchange. The judge says, "What's your name?" And I go, "Kathy Griffin?" Barely audible. Then he says, "Where do you reside?" Very softly. 2637 Centinela, Santa Monica? And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I realized Richard Ramirez is looking at me and I'm saying my home address out loud to the fucking Night Stalker. This is maybe worse than going to jail. Then the judge says, "What is your relationship with Mr. Ramirez?" I said, "None." And then it dawns on me. I'm thinking, oh my God. Then the judge says, "Have you ever corresponded with Mr. Ramirez?" "No," I answered. Holy shitballs. They think I'm one of those psycho chicks that pursues serial killers. "Do you have feelings for Mr. Ramirez?" "None, Your Honor." I see where this is going, and it's not going to be good for me. "What do you do for a living?" Then I said, "I'm a loan officer in a bank." Let me explain. That last answer was a lie. Yes, I had just stated out loud my home address in the presence of a psychopathic killer, which incidentally my late brother Gary, who was a trial attorney, told me later I didn't have to do. But I certainly was not stupid enough to admit in a court of law that actually I was an out-of-work wannabe actress, because that would sound stupid. Telling an unrepentant, still not convicted criminal where I live, that I would do. But saying, "Well, I'm taking commercial classes in Van Nuys," fingers crossed for that, right, Your Honor? Or maybe a juicy non-paying role in a student film, that could be good, Your Honor. And I'm starting soon at the Lee Strasberg Academy. Yeah, those things I deemed too embarrassing. So I lied and said I worked in a bank. Then the judge says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a case of possible jury tampering." So I seriously am thinking, this is it. I'm going to jail. Tell my mom and dad I love them. Listeners, it was a member of the jury I'd started talking to at the restroom sink. You guys probably knew that. And before you ask yourself, did she know she was on the jury? Yes, I did. But, and this is one of the reasons I regret not going to college, I truly didn't think it was inappropriate to ask a juror a question, as long as the question wasn't, "Do you think he's innocent or guilty?" That's right, learn from me, law students. Even worse, the trial had already had its issues with jury tampering, as the judge reminded everyone that day, adding, as he put it, "We cannot afford to lose another juror." In other words, naive dumbass Kathleen Griffin and her little sneaker small talk could have inadvertently led to a mistrial for one of the worst serial killers in recent memory. By the way, during the trial, a juror was actually murdered, which eventually wasn't attributed to Ramirez, but it understandably had put that entire jury on edge for the whole trial. I know that now. That judge really humiliated me. I just stood there and took it. It was crushing, but I was terrified and I was dutifully chastised. Finally, the judge actually came out and said in front of everybody, "Why are you here?" And I answered, I wanted to see a real live trial in a real courthouse and everything. And the judge goes, "Well, you certainly picked a good one. Take your seat." Everybody laughs. Just so you know, that was my first and last time attending a trial. But somewhere buried deep in the court transcripts for People versus Richard Ramirez is Kathy Griffin, who lives at 2637 Centinela.